Hello there, welcome back to this video. This is a follow-on video to answer questions raised by my first jogless join video. I'm just going to show you a little, I'm just going to show you an example, a really quick reminder of how to do the jogless join. So this is, or helical knitting. So this is just a small little sample. I've been adding in little stitches there to show you how to do all the different types of patterns that people might come across. But the idea for this pattern is to blend either two very similar yarns like indie dyed yarns, to blend them together if you're knitting a large garment or a scarf or a cowl or something in the round. It's incredibly useful for indie dyed sweaters to avoid any sort of sharp difference in colour between skeins, because with indie dyed yarn, not every skein is exactly the same. And that can be one of the issues with beautiful indie dyed yarn. You can also do this for single stripe in the round knits like baby hats or your own hat or even a sweater. You could do that as well. That's no problem. It works really well. So you knit until about 3 stitches before the change, and I call these 3 stitches my transition stitches. And then I drop my yarn that I've been knitting the whole round. It's my white yarn in this instance. I slip these 3 stitches and then I pick up my red yarn and I knit away with that. So I can knit all the way around with that red yarn until I come back around to the white yarn just here, and I will slip these 3 stitches. Now sometimes you'll overshoot, but you'll figure it out. You'll keep looking at it, it's grand. Yeah, so first off, there's a couple of really common questions from the last video. The last video is a little bit more, if that was confusing, go back and have a look at the last video, and it's helped a lot of people. This video is going to be talking about questions that people had from that first video. So 2 of the really common questions. Can I do this in the flat? Can I just knit back and forth like this? No, it does not work. It is helical knitting. It only works in the round. It just does not work for flat knitting. Sorry about that. Another really common question people asked me was, does this work for stripes thicker than 1 row? So if I wanted to do like 2 or 3 stripes of the grey and then 2 or 3 stripes of the red, it doesn't work for that. I'm afraid it only works as a single stripe colour for single stripe colour changes. But you can have as many colours as you want in single stripes. So I could have a red row, a white row, a pink row, a blue row, a green row, as many as you want. But you'll just have, say you've got 4 colours, you'll have 4 sections where you'll have these transition rows. So you'll have 4 balls of yarn on the cable at all times. You'll be knitting it with 1 at a time, but you'll get to a quarter of the way around and then you'll have to change your transition stitches, which is fine too, and it's really cute. So that's what you can do, but you can't do more than one row stripes with this. So that's why it's really good for single stripes or for blending alternating skeins. So what can you do? So a lot of people had a lot of questions about how to knit in a pattern. So when you come to think about it, I want you just to have a little look and see exactly what we're doing here. I'm going to go back to where we were with these transition stitches, okay? So, sorry. So, when we have a look at this, we can see that we have actually got 3 rows of stitches on when we have this transition stitch section where we're changing colours. So we have this row is your farthest down row. It's the row on the left-hand needle. So if you follow this across, that's here, this grey here. And then if you follow it across again, That's this row here. So you're actually 3 rows down. That's this needle over here. The transition stitches, if you can see, were the row below this way. The yarn that's coming around in the right hand needle. So when you have done that row here, you drop that, and then you are knitting the first and second row with the second yarn color. So you're knitting around like that. What can you do? How do you knit in a pattern? A lot of people have asked me, how do I do decreases? How do I do increases? How do I work cables in this? How do I knit in the garter? How do I do lace? Okay, so when you think about it, you're only putting them on pause. So they will work the next time around. The issue is when the pattern is set over more or less stitches than your transition stitches. So say it's an increase, you only need 1 stitch, so generally it works quite well. But when you're working over a pattern of a cable where it's 4 stitches or 6 stitches, remember that it doesn't have to be 3 stitches the entire time. You can adjust to 1 stitch, 2 stitch, or 5 or 6 or 10 stitches. It's up to you, whatever stitch you want to, whatever number of stitches you want. I'm going to show you what I mean now in the next clip. On this section here, I have a little cable, little section just here, but my 3 transition stitches are going to be right in the middle of that cable. So I have 2 options here. As you can see, the pattern repeat is only 4 stitches. I have 1 stitch over here, and I have 2 stitches out here, which I'm just knitting up to. What I could do is, option number 1 is knit until the pattern repeat starts, and then slip the entire thing. Slip it all. Slip all those 5 stitches. Remember, it does not have to be 3 stitches the whole time. You can adjust and change however many stitches you need to fit your pattern. That is totally fine. It does not matter because, as we said, every stitch is going to get knit. It'll just get knit on the next round. So then you can pick up with that red stitch and just keep going. Now, the other option, I'm just going to slip these back here. The other option is to do your pattern across this 4 and that last stitch just there, and just slip that 1 stitch. That's totally possible too, but it's possible because of this particular, the way that this is set up. So let's try that. I can't remember what I was doing there, so I think I'm just slipping 2 over 2. This is just a sample now, so it's a little bit messy. So there's my cable, right? And then I just slip that 1 stitch. You could do that with 1 stitch the entire way down, but it does mean that sometimes you can get a little bit of a line going that way. It's incredibly unnoticeable, I'd say, if you've got a busy pattern, really unnoticeable. But I like to do 3 stitches because it tends to even out the gauge across the 3 stitches when you're slipping them. Okay, let's try another pattern. So here we've got a little bit of a lace pattern. It's a repeat of 4 stitches. So the transition stitches, if we were doing just 3, would be just these ones, but that's right in the middle of our design. So again, I'm either going to change my 3 stitches for 5 stitches, slip all of those stitches, or knit the pattern and just slip the 1 stitch at the end. There's 2 options for that. If you've got a bigger repeat, you can work out what you need to do kind of in between. I'm going to move on now in a minute to just doing individual increases and decreases, and I'm going to show you what I do for those. Okay. Okay, so this is a section where garter stitch is turning into, the transition row is in the middle of garter stitch. So what we need to be aware of here is that on the row here at the end, we're going to be going into purling, and this row here is a knit. So understanding that when you pick up that red, you're going to have to knit these purls. But when you're coming across here with your yarn from the row before, you're going to have to be purling. Okay, so the transition stitch, we can still do our 3, that's absolutely no problem. But what we might end up doing is, we'll have a look and see how we go. A lot of this is a little bit intuitive, so figuring out how you can work it. So when you are purling across, okay, so you've got 2 stitches, I'm going to leave 3. So I'm going to slip these 3 stitches. I'll leave that yarn in the front because the next time I'm going to be coming around, I'm going to be purling all these stitches. And now what I need to do, so these were knits, I had started to purl, but now that I'm on the red, I'm on the knit stitches, so I need to knit the rest of these stitches. When you're doing garter stitch in stripes like this with the helical knitting like this, it's actually probably going to end up looking like this. So you'll get 2 rows. That's, oh, I made a mistake there and I purled. If you purl everything, so just like on the inside here, you get 2 lovely, nice and tight, neat rows of purl bumps. So I made a mistake here in the garter section and I knit using the stripes, but it actually showed up as a kind of a reverse stockinette here. Yeah, I really do love the look of the inside of the reverse stockinette using this helical technique with 2 different colors as well. It's really, really sweet. Reminds me of Where's Wally? You get really defined stitches. Yeah. So when we come around again, you're going to be slipping these 3 stitches and you're going to be purling once you know what you're doing. So I started to purl here. So once I come around, slip these 3 stitches, drop my red, pick up my white, then I'm going to be purling this section. So it's just making sure that you understand you're able to read your knitting and know when it's going to do what. So if you've got an entire project and you're doing garter stitch the whole way down, understanding, okay, I'm switching my yarn now. I was purling up to this point, so now I have to be knitting. So I think a lot of people had this question, this very common question was, does the beginning of round marker move around the design while you're doing helical knitting or using this jogless join technique? I'm here to say absolutely not. The beginning of round marker is there to mark your design. Jogless join can be used with anything in the round that you want to either blend colours or just do single stripes, but the design will always be the same. It doesn't matter what technique you're using. If you're following the pattern, your design has your beginning of round marker. That will always stay in the same place. Your beginning of round marker and your transition stitches when you're transferring over to the other ball are completely separate things. So I'll show you how to deal with a beginning of round marker. You just, if it runs in between your transition stitches, you just slip your 2 stitches there, slip your beginning of round marker and slip that last one, and then pick it up and knit again. So your beginning of round marker does not move. It's always slipped. You don't move anything. So we're coming to a section now which is an increase. So I have my transition stitches here and I'm going to be increasing on this 1 stitch before the stitch marker. Now again, I could just slip these 3 stitches, but I also could go across. I could slip these 3 stitches and work them on the next round. Or I could just do an increase, either a lifted increase like this, and then just slip the 1 stitch and then pick up your red and pull nice and tight. That's the only thing. If you're only slipping 1 stitch, just pull nice and tight with that one. And then knit away like that, and you've already done your increase. And the next time you come around, you're going to be slipping this just here. You're going to be slipping these 3 stitches, including the new one you just made. So that's an option as well. Okay, so here we're coming to a decrease. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do I decrease for a hat, say a baby hat? If I'm going to make something like this, how do I decrease for it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. So say we're coming to this decrease section and I've got 3 stitches here, but I actually want to knit these 2 stitches together. So what I think would be a good idea, so in one point here, this stitch has just knit these 2 stitches together and carried on. But then this stitch is on the next round to go for it. So what I could do is slip these and just knit that as normal. That would be the next round, which would be normal. Or what we could do is once you have slipped all these stitches, you just knit that. So that is on. So this one is a knit 2 together every second round. So that is now correct, right? So you'd be knitting away there and you'd come round to the next section. So I'll just show you what that looks like. So blah, 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 blah. We'll knit all the way around. So then you come to this section here. You'd knit all the way around until your red yarn comes up here. You swap, you slip your 3 stitches and then you pick up your white, then you knit 1, 2, and then knit 2 together. So it really, it comes down to remembering that when you come to these transition stitches, you've got 3 rows on your needles. You've got 1 row here, which if we can have a little look here. So the first row on your left needle is this row here. And then your transition stitches, whether be they 2 stitches, 1 stitches, 5 stitches, however many you need to make the pattern work, then that is your next row, which comes down here. And then your actual live row, you've got 2 technically. You've got the second and the third rows live the whole time. But this row down here is the row on your left needle when you come to that transition section. So it's a very kind of, once you practice this, once you get the hang of it, and once you start, I would recommend maybe doing a cowl first, just with stitches around and around and around, so you'll get just used to the idea, the concept, and then maybe move on to a baby hat and just try and figure out how to do increases and decreases as you go. Like I showed you, it's really not that tricky. You can change the number of transition stitches. I just like 3 because it tends to even out the gauge, but gauge doesn't really matter when you're doing your increases and decreases. You just need to get down that stitch count. So I hope that's helpful for everybody. I hope that that has been answered some questions, and if you've any more, please don't hesitate to pop them down below and I might make another video. So if you've any other questions, please do pop them below. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for your support for watching the last video, and I'm so glad it's been able to help so many people. See you next time.